And welcome to our kickoff of Inside Government for the fall 2016 semester here at KU Community College, and broadcast on Time Warner Communications, Verizon Fios, and the Auburn Regional Media Access, ARMA, as well as the college's radio station, WDNR. I'm your host, Guy Cosentino. We are delighted to have as our first guest, as we usually do each semester, Mayor Michael D. Quill, who was elected to a third four-year term last November. Mayor Quill sits on the City Council with four other members of council, all Democrats. Since he was here last in March, the city has passed a budget, appointed a new police chief, but is still in the process of finding a permanent city manager. We'll be talking about that with the mayor, as well as items related to the city, as well as his attendance at the Democratic National Convention back in July. Welcome back to Inside Government.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Great to see you. And I said before we start, if people look at your lapel, you do not have a political button on, but you have a puzzle piece.
It is. It's
light blue puzzle piece.
right. It does not stand for our Secretary of State. It's autism awareness, and I wear it whenever I have the opportunity. And today was a great opportunity to place it on my lapel.
And we're great when you do stuff like that. So I just wanted to point that out because we were talking about it before we started taping. So quick question for you. Where are you in the search for a manager?
I'm hoping that tomorrow or next week at the very latest, Council has the opportunity to ratify a contract.
So Thursday, 2 days from now.
Yes,
or if you're watching this on Thursday, earlier in the evening. So
at our next council meeting.
So let's walk through this a little bit. You originally, when you were here in March, Doug Selby had stepped down, but he hadn't left City Hall. He was still in transition. You did a national search. Am I correct on that?
We did.
Ads were placed where?
They were placed.
Like
the Conference of Mayors,
NICOM, International City
Manager Association,
as well as in some print places as well. Did you get some? How many candidates did you get in the first pool?
I believe there was 7 or 8, including a person locally. There was a person from Pennsylvania, one from California.
But you got more resumes than that. Those were your 8. You
got
down to 8.
Exactly.
And then did you narrow it down from there into some finalists?
We did some interviews.
How many interviews did you do?
We did 1, 2, 3 interviews. One gentleman from California, one from Pennsylvania, a local candidate, and we also had another candidate we were very interested in, but who was offered a job prior to having an interview in Auburn. So I feel we lost out in that regard.
So in doing that, you didn't find anybody among that group?
How do I say this? We were not happy with a couple of the interviews.
Okay.
All right. So
you can say that.
Yeah. Everyone listening knows more likely who the candidates were and so forth and so on. One candidate did very well. But then we were still not 100%, council was still not 100% sold. So we started looking internally, and we started communicating with Mr. Digert, who was our acting city manager, was also our fire chief, but he's our acting city manager.
So on that, just so is the council, from day one, when you originally had talked about this, you could do almost 3 ways to do the search. Could do it in-house, in the sense of operating in-house, have a staff person, city council do it.
Right.
You could bring in an outside consultant, and then there are ways to do a hybrid with that.
Right.
City council, in the end, went with doing it in-house. Am I correct on that?
Well, we did a nationwide search, so I don't know if I'm answering the question.
You are, but in the sense it wasn't, you didn't hire a consultant, a headhunter to come in.
That's correct. That's correct.
Which you could have.
That's
and
correct.
It's been done on occasion in the past. So you haven't reopened the search. You've just now gone to Chief Digert to have a conversation?
That's correct. That's correct.
When you said you most likely have a resolution, that sounds like you're close to a deal.
Mr. Digert and the city's attorney, not our corporation counsel, but an outside attorney, have been working for the last few weeks trying to finalize a contract, the language of it. I believe that we're all on board as to what we want, both sides, now reducing it to writing and making sure it's representative of both sides.
Would he get anything different than what you've given other city managers in the past? Benefits-wise, I should say.
Yeah, You know, in the past there have been city managers have received a car allowance.
Okay.
I don't believe a car allowance will be in this particular one. Time off was an issue with all of them. When Mr. Selby's contract was put together, there was 2 members of council who did not want him. At that time, he owned a consulting business, and he may still. So they were very concerned about the time he may be spending away from the office. We worked through that.
Chief Dygert has a consulting business.
He has outside interest.
Oh, okay.
All right. So I don't believe it's to the point where it's an actual consulting business, but he has outside interest, as everyone should.
As it stands right now, you said everyone seems on board. I'm assuming you're supportive of this appointment?
I am.
Why does Chief Dygert make sense to you?
Everyone, a good portion of citizens of Auburn are going to say because he's a fire chief. Yeah, he is a fire chief. I enjoyed working with him, but just different skill sets that he brings to the table. The ability to handle important issues in the right order. Some people come to work with 10 things they want to complete during the day, and then something more important comes around. Some people, including our past managers, including Mike Quill, have trouble at times balancing so they can get something more important done. Jeff brings that to the table. He has a good understanding of how things come together, how they work, setting his priorities. I believe he has a lot of respect from the staff. I know he does for myself and council.
How long, is this a term contract, or is it just, is he an at-will employee?
It's a term contract. But, you know, with any contract, either side can...
Well, obviously it happened with Mr. Dr. Selby. Yeah, he left early, but is this like a standard 3 or 5 year?
Yeah, I forgot what the exact language was, the final figure.
Pay is in line to what other managers have gotten?
It is.
Because you know that every Auburnian's going to ask that question.
Well, you know, it's funny, Auburnians asked, when we've hired Mr. Selby, and I believe when Mr. Palish was here, everyone said we should go internally. We should look to people here in Auburn. So then we tried to do that, and everybody saying, well, did you do a nationwide search, or why are you hiring someone locally?
So you'll get this question anyway, so I'll ask it. Is Chief Dygert a city resident? Because I know
he is.
Okay, because firefighters under state law, we should not say this is local.
Right.
State law are not required to live in their municipality.
That's correct. He is a city resident.
And you had a search.
And excuse me, but he has been for many, many years.
Okay.
As far as I know, as long as he's been employed by the city.
Is he originally from the city of Auburn?
No, he's originally from the North Country, Cato.
Okay. Not the North Country, like
Should,
Plattsburgh.
Yeah. Well, in the wintertime, Cato is like Plattsburgh.
So. So you had I want to say, it wasn't a search committee, but you had a community panel. They did the first set of reviews. Did they interview the candidates the first time around?
No.
Okay.
They did
but
not.
The second time they did with Chief Dygert.
That's correct.
Did they make a recommendation?
The way it was set up, they were not going to make a recommendation. They were taking city. It's hard to describe, but they were going to work with what the city council brought forward and either say yes, they're in favor of that individual, or they're not in favor of that.
And did they in the end?
They did in fact.
And that meeting was open to the public.
It was, and I believe there's video, probably through the clerk's office, if anyone's interested.
Are you surprised how long this has taken?
It's disappointing it's taken this long. And there's many reasons we can lay it back to. Summer gets in the way, vacation, council members are gone, this one's gone, that one's, and everyone's entitled to time off. I'm not saying that, but it dragged down longer than I had hoped.
So if Chief Dygert becomes city manager, right now I am assuming he is the fire chief and the city manager.
That is correct.
Which is not odd for the city, because you've had sometimes Chief Muchler was a perfect example.
Yes.
Chief Muchler was the police chief and the city manager at the same time. I'm assuming Chief Dygert I will still call him chief, as you're, I'm sure, occasionally called chief on occasion.
It's hard, yeah.
It's hard to drop the vernacular. He will not be the fire chief.
That is correct.
In the long term.
So once Chief Dygert, Jeff Dygert, our city manager is on board, the next step in the process will be to hire a fire chief.
And how long do you think that process will take?
Civil service has to canvass a list, see how many people are eligible, whether they're interested, and then there will be internal interviews. I don't know if Mr. Dygert will recuse himself or whatever. I do know one member.
Go ahead,
member. One member of council wants to sit on that panel.
Okay.
But I don't feel it will be of the. I don't think it will be that large of a process because it's civil service.
But wouldn't the
It's
chief, I mean, the new city manager, he'd most likely be the best qualified person to,
it's his call.
and
But,
you're
yeah.
not the council member who wants to sit on the panel.
No, not this
So
time.
So at this, so at some point, you'll likely have a new chief in, and police chief, when Chief Butler, that was a relatively short period. Was it about a month and a half, 2 months? It wasn't that long.
No, it wasn't.
It'd be the similar process?
Hopefully.
Okay. During all of it.
At the same
Go ahead.
time, keep in mind, in both the police and the fire department, the next level down of supervision, they've all stepped forward and done a remarkable job, whether it be when before Chief Butler took over, or in this interim with Chief Digert being at City Hall a good portion of his time. So the assistant chiefs, captains have all stepped forward and done what
Paul
they're-
Casper, who was acting. and all
Absolutely,
those. Okay.
absolutely.
So you also, in all of this, things do get in the way. One of those was a city budget.
Well, yeah.
You passed it back in June. How much was it for, roughly?
I could take a wild guess, but I don't want to quote myself. I'll be
Okay,
wrong.
so did property taxes go up?
They did a trifle.
And under the tax cap?
Under absolutely.
Okay.
Under
Did
the
you
tax-
have to raise other fees, existing
We did.
fees?
We did raise some other fees and trash fees, things of that nature.
So where are you with this whole issue of the, there's a fee related to garbage collection in homes. So what, did council enact anything back in June regarding that?
yes.
Okay, what
So-
was that?
So each resident will be charged an appropriate amount for trash fees. And the best reason that I can describe, you know where I live, most people do, on Lansing Street. There's my wife and I took the trash out today. It was 2 bags of trash. Adjacent to my property is a multiple dwelling with, what, 4, 5 apartments?
But multiple
So
dwellings were paying,
They were paying.
but now this will be everyone, am I
Yeah,
correct?
absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
has this fee been fully implemented by now?
Yes. Yep.
And for those, so I am a property taxpayer, but I don't see my tax bill. So am I going to get a letter from the city saying they want my money, or is it go on my tax bill?
I can't answer that.
Okay.
Because I can't, I honestly.
We're
I
going
don't
to
wanna-
invite, by the way, we're going to invite Chief Doggett on, or city
Well,
manager.
I hope he's taking notes then.
Because I didn't know if that was how you will pay it, how as a property owner you will pay it.
As most people, it has been told to me, most people just pay through their escrow.
Right,
And,
and
they don't know the difference.
And then I get, First Niagara, which will soon be Key Bank. I get this very long sheet that looks like I have to have a slide rule
Yeah.
to understand
Yes,
everything.
yeah.
So, did the city, by raising these fees, which I am assuming will generate obviously more cash, did it reduce the general fund costs for this as well? Because that's been an issue in the past. That said, for example, if it cost, and I'm going to use round numbers that are
Sure,
not accurate,
sure.
but if it cost $500,000 to pick up trash, that if you created a fee that would raise $400,000, then 400 should come off of that 500.
Basically, yes.
Did it in this particular case?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. It's going to be considered now an enterprise fund.
Like sewer, water,
Absolutely.
and some landfill
Yeah,
fees.
and we're one of the last municipalities in the state that still did it through our property taxes.
We're going to have Keith Batman on in a couple of weeks, and I know one of the issues they've been dealing with has been how to get around this, how to deal with revenue needs when you have a tax cap
Right.
in place. Is creating these fees, like a trash fee, I'm not going to call it garbage tax, or whatever, is this a way around the state mandated tax cap?
It could be considered a way around it, but at the same time, in Auburn, we didn't do it to get around the tax cap.
But you could see more counties and municipalities going this route, because I think when you were at the State of the City, and correct me if I'm wrong, your general fund, if you hit the tax cap because of the convoluted way that Albany does it, you could have raised $15,000, which was half a police car, and you never told me if it was laterally or horizontally.
Yeah. But you're correct.
So you could see this as a way where you are going. Do you see the city looking at fees in the future, because this is a way to?
Well, the city does have fees, and that's always a lively debate. You have if you're going to put a new window in your home, you have fees for that. You want to use a park downtown for something other than just a stroll, there's fees for that. So everything does have a fee of some sort.
And I'm assuming, because we had you on in March, I think about the 16th, I looked up in my day book. Did the state approved its budget after you were last on? Did it give you any new money, any extra aid, no unfunded mandate relief?
No, nothing.
And
The only thing that did go up a little bit was we are reimbursed for the arterial maintenance on the arterial.
Don't open that door.
But we did receive a little bit of
For road work, not lights.
lights now.
No, okay.
I've known you many years, and we've always had this conversation.
We're not going to take it up right now. Final vote on the budget itself. I'm not talking about the trash fee, but the budget unanimous?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, it was.
The city was one of a handful of community. There were 10 competitions statewide
For DRI?
For the upstate money, which was about $10 million. We had competition like Cortland and I think Oswego. What did the city apply for?
We applied to have in the area of behind the old Nolan's Sporting Goods shoe store, the Loop Road in that area. What we wanted to do was put close the roadway off, put a large structure in there to have the farmer's market. There was a local brewery that wanted to move
Prison
into
City
the
was gonna
Prison
be-
City wanted to move in there, so that was our hopes.
I know the city did not win it.
That's correct.
Oswego won it, which was disappointing to the city. Was it worth the city going through the process, though?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And are there projects are all the projects that were applied for dead?
No, far from it.
So
Far
does
from
that
it.
mean, so part of this is the governor's very into competition.
Yes, yes, he is.
Some have called it Hunger Games. Some have had a lot less charitable phrases for it. But you have these regional economic development councils. You sit on
do.
one you're going to be reviewing over the next couple of weeks, or have you done that
That's
already?
already been done.
Done some projects. Do some of those types of projects end up in these regional economic development council pools?
In our case, I believe we're going to try to do that.
Okay.
That's going to be our direction.
So let me ask you about two projects that were mentioned that you didn't mention in there. One was there was a story in the Citizen about two visitor centers. You most likely remember the headline,
Yeah.
Good or bad. One for the city of Auburn and one for the Harriet Tubman
right.
Center. A, was that correct? And B, if it's not, what exactly are you talking about?
Okay. I've said many times, and I'll always say that by the city of Auburn choosing to call their visitor center the Harriet Tubman Visitor Center, it was with good intent, but it was not to compete with the AME Zion Church on South Street or any of the associated properties.
So they may have their own visitor center.
Hopefully they still will.
That's for that site.
That's
Yours
correct.
is a more generic visitor center where you go to all the historic sites, or Doubledays, the Falcon Park,
Absolutely.
items
Seward,
like
the
that.
Seward Mansion, the Schweinfurth, the Cougar Museum.
So it's, while it has the name Harriet Tubman, it is. Is there a point, at some point, where naming things using Harriet Tubman, just as we had the same thing some time ago with Seward, it gets overdone. Now then it becomes everybody's tripping over each other?
Yeah, I think it's getting close to the saturation.
There's a saturation,
point.
okay.
And keep in mind, there's many thoughts as to what it's going to be, and we're honing in on this. But this will be a visitor center. So if you come in from Albany and you want to visit the Harriet Tubman Center, for example, you may not be aware of the Seward Mansion or the Schweinfurth Museum.
And a lot of municipalities, many municipalities have these visitor centers, which are separate than what Meg Vanek is doing at the tourism office, correct?
Right.
So, on the Harriet Tubman issue for a second, because where is the process right now with the National Park Service as you understand it?
The way I understand it, the National Park Service will have a presence on South Street, on the Tubman property.
But they're not
itself.
going to operate, they're going to operate the church on
Right,
Parker Street.
and that's where I was going. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the church on Parker Street, and one of the adjoining buildings is a convent, I believe.
But that was not what the city was originally campaigning for, and this is prior to you, but you were a big cheerleader for this as well.
Right.
That was not the original intent of local efforts. It was to have them operate South Street.
South Street, that's correct.
And they're not at this particular stage.
They will have a presence there, but it will still be in the hands of the AME Zion Church.
Okay.
Whereas the church in the convent will be owned by the National Park Service.
Okay. And do you see the National Park Service having Parker Street open?
They're there is legal paperwork that has to be completed.
Okay. Because there have to be agreements. It's not that
Absolutely.
this property is not in the hands of the city, for example.
No, no, it is not. When the Mr. Snyderman was here, the state attorney general, we asked him. We were led to believe that it was in the hands of the state attorney general. All the deeds paperwork that they have to clear through, and they had not even seen it yet. So somewhere between the two, it's in there.
The other project that was in there that you didn't mention was the Shines Theater. There was funding
yep.
for that. Where does that project stand?
It's in the hands of private owners. The city has no control whatsoever.
No, it's in County Arts Council,
right.
which is separate 501c3.
The thought was to try to receive some money to try to stabilize it, some asbestos abatement, some cleaning of the interior, because no one can actually go inside now because of asbestos. But that was not fruitful either.
And was this submitted in the Red Sea applications, do you know?
I know it was in the DRI, but I don't know what they had done.
DRI stands for what?
Downtown Revitalization Initiative.
Which is the 10 million.
That's correct.
Okay. The other,
You got to keep up with these acronyms.
I know.
They pop up
So
all
one
over.
of the other items on this in regards to downtown and theaters, Callett's building, last year at this time you held a public hearing, or a public discussion
Right.
about Callett's building. What's going on with that site?
They are working, I believe the name is Bergman, who is one of our contractors, working through the brownfield development revitalization. Brownfield.
So they're going to make recommendations
They
to...
are. See what can be done there.
Is it a brownfield as far as you're concerned?
I don't believe it is, no.
So then why...
That's only Mike Quill speaking.
Okay.
Is Mike Quill.
So why a brown... It's just experts in there that can come out
Yes.
and... Okay.
And give us some direction as to what's needed downtown, what should go there.
Do you foresee there any development in the next year?
I would hope so. I would
But
hope
nothing's
so.
on the plan?
No, nothing's that far along.
We mentioned Double Days. You're on the board there. How did they make out for the season?
They did well. Attendance was up, revenue was up to a point.
So there is a loan that was made a couple weeks ago to the Double Days. It
Right.
should be said for the record, for those who don't know, Falcon Park is a municipal park, but the
Right.
Double Days, in one of those anomalies of life, is owned by the city of Auburn.
That's correct.
So was it basically a fund transfer? How much was it, by the way?
Was it 45 or 65,000?
Okay. And what does that cover? What was it used for?
There was a loan out with a local bank that they were paying the interest. They could not afford the principal, so they were paying the interest, continuing paying the interest. Cities come to realization that this is our asset, our liability. We need to step forward, help them with some cash flow problems.
And
during
as far
the
as you're
year.
concerned, it's always going to be a city asset.
There's a possibility that it may not be a city asset, but it's never going to leave here as long as we can fight for it.
Okay.
And I don't.
But there's no
There's-
plans to sell the team.
There's talks about possibility of selling the team, but it has to be the team has to remain in the city of Auburn,
Okay.
if that makes any sense.
It does. So real quickly before I want to get to the last item, you just signed an agreement or approved an agreement for school resource officers.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
what was that for?
The term was for 5 years. What it does is there was a large amount of overtime for after-school activities that was incurred. The city of Auburn taxpayers were paying that solely. We worked a deal with the SROs and with the school district that over 5 years, that will all come out of the school district's budget. So all the surrounding towns of Wasco, Senate, Weber.
So I'm going there because
yeah.
you also just committed to protecting Wasco Lake, correct? With some
Yep,
funds?
yep.
How much are you committing to that?
You need Councilor McCormick here.
Okay,
for that.
but
it's more dealing with the watershed inspector, and it's not really a large additional amount of money. It's more in how we figure. do
But
our
it is
budgeting.
some. So is that money coming out of your general fund or sewer and water?
Sewer and
rates?
water.
But there was a citizen, again, I want to go back to the citizen.
Sure.
There was an editorial the other day that mentioned the SROs, mentioned this, and the towns needing to step up.
Right.
In both of these cases, they are not coming up with money out of their pockets. Am I correct?
They're not as, let's pick on Owasco. The town of Owasco is not contributing to the SROs or, let's go with the SROs, but their residents are. The residents that are in the Auburn Large School District will be paying an increase over the years. It will
But
be,
right now, those towns, like the city of Auburn is covering the cost for the SROs.
That's correct, that's
Okay.
correct. And when it started, let's be honest, there was all federal grants.
Do you ever think that they will ever pony up?
They're gonna have to.
Okay. Shift gears a little bit. You were a delegate to the Democratic National
Yes,
Convention back in July.
Yes,
Who were you a delegate for?
for Secretary of State Clinton.
And for those who've never been to a convention or don't know what a delegate does, what does a delegate do?
It's equally time spent between sheer boredom and super excitement. So
Okay.
very, very, very long days. You have sometimes you have a caucus every morning. Everyone met from. We were in the hotel. New York State was in one hotel.
Having a nominee gets you closer.
Yeah.
New York for the first time was closer to the.
Yeah.
But there were New York delegate events as well. Every morning you had a
Every
breakfast with a different governor.
speaker, different programs. That's
Bernie
correct.
Sanders was one of your.
He was.
Did Mrs. Quill go with you?
No.
And by the way, what's tomorrow?
Tomorrow's our 42nd wedding anniversary.
Congratulations. I would just want to get that in there. That's what all these questions were
Poor
for.
lady.
Would you do it again?
Get married?
No, I'm sorry. Be a delegate again. She most likely will pay me if I will ask that question as well.
I'd marry her in a minute, without
Okay.
a doubt. I don't know. I enjoyed it. They were long, long days. At home, you had the luxury of watching what was going on because they cut away to different things, and you could walk away. But here, because of the heightened security, we were down. I was 8 rows back from the center stage. So once you left the floor to go to the men's room or whatever, it was very, very hard to get back. And certain times you were not allowed back into the
So you
area where-
didn't have a designated seat?
No. But we were dead center. We were on one side, or adjacent to us was Virginia. So we should have known right away that the next vice president was going to be from Virginia because of the proximity.
Gotcha. And you did your interview with Carson Daly.
I did.
Gave some publicity for Auburn.
And I had no idea who he was. So.
So you got total requests. We'll have to tell you about that later.
Okay.
Do you think you watched the debate last night? Final question. Watched the debate last night. Kind of feisty. Do you think it gets better from now until November 8th?
I watched the debate, probably 3/4 of it, and I came away with my own opinions. And then you watch all the news, the media people, and I wonder at times if I watch the same debate as they may have, and I know they're a lot smarter than I am, but it was interesting. So I think it's going to be feistier. So.
Mayor, thank you for coming on board and kicking off our season. We hope you will return with the new city manager, and if you don't mind introducing him and bring him on board in the next couple of weeks.
Be glad to do it.
Our guest has been Auburn Mayor Michael D. Quill. We look forward to having him back in a couple of weeks as well. We will return in just a moment with our first Beyond the Front page of the new semester here up at the college. We'll have a United Way update with their 2016 campaign chairs, Karen and Bill Speck, and their new executive director, Karen Macier. On Thursday, we'll be back with 2 back-to-back Beyond the Front page shows. The first featuring Eileen Jarrett, who's a documentarian who produced a documentary called Blueberry Soup about the 2008 Icelandic effort to rewrite a constitution for the nation. Something that, by the way, might be occurring here in New York State when you get to vote next November. She is the Brunel Visiting Scholar for QU Community College for the semester. And we'll have a second show, which will feature Cleo Parker Robinson of the Cleo Parker Robinson Dance Ensemble that is performing here at the college in the Irene Bisgrove Theater at the college at 7 p.m. this coming Friday, September 30th, sponsored by the college's Student Activities Board. Next Tuesday, the 4th, we will feature a discussion with several city officials on the new parks plan that is being presented this Thursday, as well as next Thursday on the 6th, we will have New York State John DeFrancisco in the studio for an extended Inside Government. Later in the month, we'll hopefully be bringing you several forums, including those for the New York State Assembly and Senate, as well as Congress. We have the one for the Assembly confirmed for November 1st. We'll have more details as we go into the month. I'm Guy Cosentino for QU Community College. We want to thank you for watching. We hope you have a good night and have a great tomorrow, and join us in a few minutes for Beyond the Front Page.